It was interesting. School was interesting. We had few books. We didn't have as many books as the whites had,
Hmm.
but we learned quite a bit. And let me see,
What was the name of the school you went to?
uh, the elementary school doing in the like I said in the deep south, the schools were named for the church. They were adjacent to the church or on the same campus of the church. Most of them were, right near the church, and so they were all named from the church. My elementary school was named Brown's School,
Hmm.
by Bram, and the church was Bram's Chapel.
Hmm.
So the school was Bram's School. And then when I went to high school, the high school was right across the street from the church, Walton Chapel. So the school was Walton Chapel High School.
Okay.
So most all of them were named for that they were near for the church, near the church. They were always near the church. And like when I went to high school, we even had classes in the church when the overflow from the school, and we would have classes in the church also.
Hmm.
Uh, so
Yeah, you was going to mention something else that y'all was doing when y'all was working besides cotton and corn. You was going to mention something else that y'all worked in the field and did.
no.
It was just corn and cotton.
In the area where I lived, there was no produce areas. They did that somewhere. I don't know where they did that, but we didn't. Not in the area where I live.
Tell me more about school. Was the elementary school all black, or did integration start in elementary school or high school? How did that go in your town?
Integration didn't start until the 60s
The 60s.
or the 70s.
Hmm.
Really in the South, when they were fighting for integration, it wasn't not when I was going to school.
Yeah, but I heard some towns they took a select few and integrated. They didn't integrate everybody, but they took a select few to certain schools to integrate them. What your school? You said your
Not
school was
that,
what was the
not
bigger
that,
what was the
not
bigger high
that,
school in your town?
not that early.
Okay.
No, I graduated from high school in '55.
Okay.
So there nobody was going in the deep south was going to school when they in Arkansas when they it was maybe the late '50s or early '60s when they integrated. Arkansas started and uh, Mississippi started somewhere around that time, but it didn't go off well.
Yeah, it did.
Now they had to call in the National Guard, even to protect those children. And even in the '60s here in Memphis, they didn't start integrating till in the '60s because uh, I came to Memphis in '61,
Hmm.
and they were just integrating. So then the deep south, no.
What made you leave your small town in Mississippi to go to Memphis?
Huh, huh.
What made you leave your small town in Mississippi to go to Memphis?
Well, I needed to expand. It was nothing in the south. It was nothing for me to do.
Hmm.
And I graduated from high school, and my grandmother was old, and I kind of stayed with her for a while, and then I finally moved to Memphis, got a job. I went to college for a year at the Mississippi Industrial College in Holly Springs, but I didn't have any support. My parents they didn't give me anything. So my
Hmm.
grandmother was not really able to pay for me to go to school. So I only went 1 year. And after I finished that year, I came to Memphis and got a job.
Hmm.
And that was in '61.
What was your first job?
I worked at St. Joseph Hospital in the dietary department. We didn't cook the meals, but we carried them to the rooms to the patient.
And what made you choose Memphis instead of, going west to California or going all the way north to Chicago? What made you
Well,
choose Memphis?
you had to have some. I came to live with my aunt, my dad's sister.
Oh,
You had to
your dad's
have
sister live in Memphis?
somebody.
Yeah,
You had to have somebody you could go and live with.
right.
Until you couldn't pay rent with what you were earning.
Mm,
So you just had to stay with a relative. So Memphis was the place, and then I didn't want to go far away because my grandmother still lived in Mississippi by herself, and I would want to come go and see her every now and then.
right. No, I understand.
Yeah. So and it was one of the reasons. Well, I guess that was the reason.
That you came to Memphis, huh?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
How hard was it growing up in that small town in Mississippi?
It was hard. We were poor.
Mm,
We were poor, lived in poor housing, and we lived in we didn't. There was no such thing as apartments. Everybody lived in their own house, but you were poor. You didn't have much of anything.
mm,
And those were the days before, you know, now people, it started somewhere in I guess maybe in the 70s when they started giving you food stamps and all of that kind of stuff. So it was nothing then. It was no welfare. It was nothing. However you earn from the crops, and then you go out and, like I say, we would go out and work for somebody and get the little money, and then we grew. We had beans, dry beans, and stuff that that you grew in your little garden, and you kept all those kind of things that you could preserve. And people canned they canned stuff in jars, and they would have that food. That would be food. And then they got meal from people that grew corn. They had they would grind the corn up and make meal, and that was your cornbread. And of course, we had enough money to buy flour from the little towns and stuff. But we were poor. It was hard.
mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know. They said that a lot of people didn't have electricity or refrigerator, so for the meat
right.
they would salt the pork, and a lot of
Yeah.
people didn't really eat beef because it didn't last long.
Right. They would buy it doing like you would go into the little towns and buy it, and you would come home and cook it, and you could cook it and eat it. It would last a day or so because it didn't spoil. I don't know, the Lord took care of us, I guess.
But
It didn't
pork,
spoil like this. They just like
when you salt the pork, it lasts a decent time.
Well, the pork, once that was curing the pork, it's just like ham. When you buy ham now, you really cured ham. You really don't have to refrigerate it,
Hmm.
because it's cured. It's called cured, and that meat lasts until they ate it all up. you know. And we never had it. Too much. Maybe somebody might give her something because we didn't grow. Like I said, from the time I was 9, we didn't grow any pigs and all of that, and we didn't we didn't do it because it was just my grandmother and me, and so we couldn't do that. But the neighbors would give you stuff. And
Oh
so
yeah, that's why like people talk about like going to borrow sugar from your neighbor. So that's where that come from. Back in that time where people go borrow a
yeah,
lot from their neighbor and stuff.
and they would share. People shared a lot. You know. They
Yeah.
would share with you whatever they had. They would share with you. They would share with you.
So everybody was a little bit more neighbor friendly back then, huh? not as
Oh,
isolated as it is now.
very much so. Yeah, very much so. Yeah.